Red leaves on the river, footprints in the sand, cold walk in December, warming up your hands. It's good running in the air like this, but girl, I'm close as I can get.
How do you turn the mild-mannered Katie Ledecky into an unstoppable force of nature? Just add water. When she touches a pool, records break, gold piles up, and well, you'll see.
The Olympic spirit is something that's so beautiful and so universal.
It's all about bringing the world together. You represent so much more than yourself.
People from all over the world, and everything kind of just stops.
Everyone's there for one moment and to see their country do well and win, no matter where you're from.
You want to see your country succeed.
Overpowering, amazing sense of unity.
There's nothing better than that.
This is so good and so juicy.
It is so good. The remix.
There's bacon in the jam.
I think mixing the bacon with the jam was genius. Whoever did that is a genius.
Sonic Bacon Jam Cheeseburger.
Flavor.
This jam is special.
When we say no store does more, it's because our market partners and in-store certified meat cutters do more every single day. Prepping, cutting, and grinding beef fresh in store. So that literally only the best makes the cut. Because when we do more...
To look at the website and sign up for your newsletter. And I've been watching your videos and I've seen every single launch that I've known about. Really love the Club for the Future, and your program to send public messages to space is brilliant. You're really making space so accessible to kids. And I drew a new Shepard on my postcard here. Yes, so we're working with the Lukumi Foundation, and they're all about making a difference for their own lives and help others using good deeds. And we invite any kids to join worldwide. So my idea with Blue Origin and Lukumi is to collaborate with Club for the Future to make the postcards to send in space. And we are going to put positive and inspirational messages on the cards. And instead of having them returned back to yourself, we're going to send them to someone else. It'll be great, in fact, even out of this world. No, although I'd just like to say, if you ever need a junior correspondent for New Shepard, I'm your kid. Go Team Blue. Marauding Ferocious.
Oh my God, what an adorable and inspiring kid.
Beckett, you should just take my seat, although I'm sure the Ellen show has already called him. We've lost our moment. All right, well, so as we're talking about Club for the Future, I do want to talk about another initiative from the club, which involves our buddy Mannequin Skywalker, who's on board today. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that, Patrick?
Absolutely. I love talking about Mannequin, the next adventure. So Blue Origin is going to be donating Mannequin Skywalker to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, which is home, of course, to one of our key partners, Space Camp. So we're also going to be donating one of the new Shepard seats. And so with Mannequin and the seat, I think we can tell a great story about sort of that path to flight and really tell students how, Mannequin essentially helped the New Shepard program and human spaceflight. So I think that could be a great way to, actually see it there.
Absolutely agree.
And if we go to a little bit more detail sort of on that story, one of the cool things about these mannequins is that in many ways they're similar to the kind used by first responders in rescue training. So there we see Mannequin, actually in New Shepard capsule, in space. Gosh, I'm sure he wants to be floating around up there. And so
he's taking in the zen of space,
there you
Patrick.
go. Exactly.
That's what he's doing.
You and I would not be zen up
no.
there. But these mannequins mimic the weight, form, and center of gravity and the range of motion of the human body. So it allows us to actually test the weight and CG and balance in the capsule, just like we would be if we were flying real people. And so that Mannequin that's going to be flying today is actually the same one that flew on the last mission with those Space Camp astronaut wings pinged to the flight suits. It's going to be really cool to see all of that kind of make its way back home.
Very cool indeed. I can't wait to see Mannequin at the Space and Rocket Center in Alabama soon. Again, as you've mentioned, they've been wonderful partners with our Club for the Future. Okay, we're at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go until New Shepard's 15th launch to space, although I do notice here that we have gone into a brief hold. So why don't we check out New Shepard on the pad as she gets ready for her flight. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th launch to space. We're at T-minus 45 seconds to go until launch. Another countdown to another what should be exciting launch. We are in a hold at the moment, but while we've got a little bit of time left, we did want to bring you up to speed on some progress with our New Glenn vehicle development down in Florida. New Glenn, of course, is our orbital rocket, the successor to New Shepard, our suborbital rocket. We're investing in building a state-of-the-art facility down in the Cape. It is beautiful. You were just down there last week, right? And we're testing flight operations with a giant Stage 1 simulator, producing flight hardware and growing the integration and test facilities down there on our campus. Now, why don't we check out the recent progress for our New Glenn rocket factory at Cape Canaveral with, once again, Caitlin Dietrich.
Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin Dietrich reporting here from Florida Space Coast in front of New Glenn's rocket factory and growing campus. Let's go. Scott, thank you for having us today. Tell us a little bit about the New Glenn rocket factory.
The campus here in Florida is about 1 million square feet. We currently have over 550 people on site, and we've been growing significantly. We've just entered the high bay, the centerpiece of the factory. Raw stock aluminum comes in one end of the factory to our south, and a rocket moves out to the north.
Take a look at this thing. It's so cool to see New Glenn's first stage like this, just mocked up.
With 180 feet, we're going to be towing something that's close to a football field in length, and it's also 23 foot in diameter, which is larger than anything flying today.
You just showed us outside some of the flight-like parts of the first stage. And this is where we're fabricating them right next door, right?
That's right. This is one of our busiest shops right now. And the team can work on both the forward face, and another part of the team can be behind on the back face. Then they'll go out, be assembled to form that forward and aft module of the New Glenn first stage. You know, these mills that we make these parts on, we're doing things on a scale that has not been done before.
It looks like we have a lot of hardware here on the floor.
Yeah, I love this part of the factory. I mean, we're building domes, we're building barrels, and now we're ready to move into the flight hardware production stage.
We're inside the dome.
So imagine we're at the top of the Stage 2 tank. Below us is a full first stage and second stage New Glenn rocket, over 200 feet. And we're now entering our composites hub. This is where our payload fairing, one of our other big elements of New Glenn, is made. This 7-meter payload fairing offers twice the volume of anything flying today. So when you're a payload customer, when you see this, you think, I can put a huge satellite in there, or I can put a whole bunch of small to medium satellites in there and really take advantage of the capability that New Glenn brings to the mix.
very exciting, the operations that it's been fun to watch it kind of mushroom out of the swampy area down there in Florida, just to see this entire campus that we have built. Again, we are the first organization that is going to be building the rocket and flying it out of Florida. So that should be coming up in a couple of years here. That's going to be very exciting. Now, as part of that orbital launch site and general facility campus that we're building there, we have something called the TCAT, or the Tank Cleaning and Testing Facility. We use this facility to pressure test and clean New Glenn stages before flight. And this massive building that we're about to show you is being used for the fully reusable first stage, which stands 180 feet tall. To give you some context, that's about 3 times the size of New Shepard just in the first stage. So why don't we take a look at this facility?
We're standing in front of the tank cleaning and testing facility for New Glenn on the Rocket Factory campus. About 230 feet tall. We're going to head into the building and get to know this facility and all the capabilities it gives us. So this door right here opens, and essentially the first stage of New Glenn will come in, and this large crane above our head will lift the vehicle up into this fixture right here. This is where the rocket will be when we do the pressure testing. Once the rocket is vertical on this fixture, we use tie downs right here to secure the vehicle. So you can see here we're only on the 3rd floor, and I feel like I've been in this elevator for about 10 years. So we just got into the TCAP at about the same level as the top of New Glenn's first stage. And I just took a quick peek over this railing, and I gotta tell you, this is going to be a massive rocket. So we're climbing just the rest of the stairs to the top of the tower. I feel like I'm standing on New Glenn's first stage. Woohoo! And one thing that's so evident when you're looking down on almost this New Glenn city and our launch site in the port, we really have something unique here. There's no other facility on the Cape where you build the rocket, you fly it, you bring it back, and you fly it again.
Super exciting, super exciting. And, you know, we've talked about it a lot on previous webcasts, but I think it's worth bringing up again. There's been so much value already out of this New Shepard program. Well, we haven't flown people yet, although as today is a testament to, we are very close to flying people to space. But taking the lessons from the design of New Shepard, the operations of New Shepard, the human spaceflight operations of New Shepard, as well as the refurbishment of the vehicles themselves, and rolling them into New Glenn has been, you know, it's almost like it catapults you. It's a, you know, it's a trampoline to the next level, which is why we've already started New Glenn.
Absolutely, Ariane. I mean, essentially all of the learnings that we've had from this great vehicle have already been applied. You see it sort of in the design, everything from how we lay out the stages, the tank designs, everything from how we manufacture the tanks with friction stir welding. You know, all of these things we've learned on New Shepard, and now we're applying on New Glenn. But, you know, to your point, it's at a, you know, 3 to 5x scale, right? Which is kind of, you know, has its own challenges.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the parallels between the first stage of New Glenn and the booster on New Shepard? Yeah, no, it's a great analogy there. So you actually see a lot of the similar design there, which is really interesting. So we have, you know, the same, essentially the same aerodynamic surfaces there, right? So with the strakes and the fins, we have them on New Shepard on that propulsion module. Same thing on the you know, GS1 on the first stage of New Glenn. They just happen to be much larger. I mean, you and I can probably carry the fin of a New Shepard, whereas the one on the first stage of New Glenn is actually the size of you know, the wing of an F-16. And to be clear, you know, we call it a fin. We call it, actually internally we call it a strake. It effectively acts like a wing. Yeah. Right? Because at 180 feet long, it's effectively, it's kind of like an airplane, right? And we want to have lift on the vehicle to be able to fly it back. and get it back onto our landing ship that will be underway when it comes into land.
Absolutely. So those fins and strakes allow us to get a lot of stability, both essentially directionally or rotationally, and it gives us a lot of the ability to go downrange to land. So a New Shepard allows us to kind of come back and precision land on the pad. Right. With New Glenn, we're going to be landing downrange on a moving ship. So by having all of these aerodynamic structures and having all of that design heritage on how to design them, how to use them in our flight control systems, it allows us to land with a lot of precision downrange without having to use a lot of propulsive maneuvers to essentially, use up all that fuel to kind of land. So lots of great learning from there. A lot of our learning around how we actually land. I mean, Gary sort of spoke to it, right? Our ability to kind of throttle down, right, hover, and kind of land and kind of bring it down nice and gentle there is extremely important. We want to be able to land precisely, and all that throttle ability and guidance around landing all developed on New Shepard, so we don't have to learn it again on New Glenn on something much bigger and much more hefty.
Hefty. I don't know if the rocket would like you calling it hefty.
That's right.
Okay, well, we are at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go until New Shepard's 15th launch to space and back. As we've mentioned before, hopefully you caught it as well, we had a successful astronaut experience rehearsal test for the pre-flight operations. Following the flight, those same stand-in astronauts will head out to the capsule once it comes back down, so we can practice some of those post-flight operations as well. But in the meantime, we are in a brief hold. We just want to make sure that our teams are getting aligned and we're all set for New Shepard's flight to space. So why don't we check out New Shepard while she's on the pad getting ready for her flight to space today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We are T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go until launch here. Our team is just getting aligned on some last-minute issues. But while we've got a little bit of time here, I wanted to bring you all up to speed on some recent progress that we've made on the BE4 engine. We were just talking about New Glenn. You called it hefty. Maybe it's big boned. Again, you know, don't offend the rocket. You're going to want it to work.
It's taken a lot of payload into space. That rocket is doing a great job there.
Absolutely. It's a robust rocket. Now, we have been working on the BE4 engines that are going to propel that rocket. There are going to be 7 BE4 engines, Blue Engine 4s, and we've been successfully hot firing those engines as part of a regimented test program, and we've seen some long duration, full power burns on a regular basis from that engine. To date, we've accumulated over 11,000 seconds of test time. In addition, recently we delivered the first Pathfinder engines to our customer United Launch Alliance for their Vulcan Centaur rocket, which should be flying later this year. And I, for one, cannot wait to watch that rocket and those engines blast off from the Space Coast.
Absolutely.
Mock diamonds are certainly a thing of beauty, aren't they?
Yeah, they
Why don't
are.
we check out some of this footage from a recent BE4 test? There you go, Patrick. You can see the BE4 engine testing. We actually have 2 test cells down there that are both up and firing, which is great because you can test on one engine, get your learnings, you know, adjust the hardware, and in parallel, you can be testing on the next test cell so you don't have a lot of downtime. So this engine here, this is a 550,000 pound of thrust engine. So that's 5 times the power of the BE3 engine, the Blue Engine 3, which is powering New Shepard today. And there will be 7 of those. That means 3.85 million pounds of thrust on liftoff when New Glenn blasts off from the Space Coast in a couple of years here. And again, as mentioned, we've had a lot of successful test firings on it, which is great. This is the first of this sort of liquefied natural gas, LNG, and liquid oxygen engine. Think of LNG like a commercial form of methane for those of you at home that are less familiar with rocket propellants. And so far, so good. And that LNG, actually, we should talk about that for a second. We've picked it for a couple of reasons. For one thing, when you have a reusable rocket, you need reusable rocket engines, which means you need to be able to bring the engines home and refurbish them quickly. And when you use that sort of clean propellant, you can get in there. There's not that kind of nasty coking and other sort of nasty things that come with other types of propellant. It's green.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing as well. And the other thing about LNG, for you rocket nerds at home, you probably know this too, is that it allows us to autogenously pressurize the engine. What does that mean? It means that we can use that LNG to pressurize the lines in the rocket engine as opposed to bringing in what we use on other engines or what others use on other engines, which is helium, which is good, it works, but the problem is it's quite expensive and sometimes can be in kind of tricky supply. So.
Absolutely, and the great thing about LNG is that it's, you know, extremely cheap. It's the same, you know, very similar to the gas you use at home. So very easy to get in and use for this. It keeps the costs low. The other great thing about it is because it's actually much denser than hydrogen, you can make that first lot of propellant into a small volume and be able to get a lot of payload up there into space.
Yeah, so we're very proud of this rocket engine that we've developed so far, and have enjoyed working with our partners at United Launch Alliance, who again will be using that rocket engine. They'll be using 2 of them on their Vulcan Centaur, so that should be really fun to watch. So with that, we're at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go until New Shepard's launch here this morning. We are in a hold. Our teams are working to make sure that New Shepard can launch today. Also want to make sure that the weather is within bounds. You see it is a bit hazy down there in Texas. We also, of course, as always, watch the winds aloft. We've mentioned this before. You can't really tell down there because of the limited brush, but it can be quite windy, and so it's imperative that our team make sure that everybody, the teams are aligned, but also the weather is within bounds. So why don't we check out New Shepard here? Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live while we wait here for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We are in a hold here, wanting to make sure that our teams get aligned. Again, I'm Ariane Cornell, here with my co-host, Patrick Zaituni. Now, while we've got a little bit of time, why don't we talk about another one of our programs that we have going on at Blue, our human landing system, our Blue Moon program. And it's part of NASA's Human Landing System program. And we have, we've based our activities for HLS, as we call it, down in Huntsville, Alabama, at our factory down there. And we've actually put a full-scale pathfinder of our descent element lander in preparation of our demonstration mission to the lunar surface. This mission is going to happen a year before landing crew on the moon, which, by the way, I love saying those words. And by proving out our technology and pre-positioning equipment down there on the lunar surface, it's going to start America's sustainable return to the moon, and this time to stay. Let's check out this video.
One of the things that our team is doing is a demonstration flight of our descent element 1 year before we actually send crew, humans, down to the surface. And that provides an enormous amount of risk reduction. We get to practice. In Huntsville, we've put together a full-scale pathfinder of the DE demo lander. We can test out, prove out the BE-7 engine, all the major subsystems, the whole propulsion system, the fluid system, the electrical power system, the fuel cells, avionics, the sensors, all of that. We can send that lander and land it autonomously on the surface before the crew goes there. We can deliver all kinds of payloads. We can deliver a metric ton of stuff. We can pre-position material, and it can be whatever you want it to be. We can begin to build up Artemis Space Camp. We're looking at several different ways of offloading payloads from the deck. The obvious thing is a crane. And we've actually got a crane provided for us by Langley Research Center at NASA. We're also looking at a Dabbit system that's being developed by Honeybee Robotics. We're not standing still at the national team. We built this full-scale pathfinder of the DE demo mission in Huntsville to enable long-term sustainability, getting America back to the moon, this time to stay.
It's so cool to watch that video. I mean, Patrick, we talk about this a lot. Step by step, ferociously, gradatum ferociter. That's our motto here at Blue. New Shepard leads into New Glenn. And from once then we're up in orbit, where do we go from there? Like, hey, why don't we go to the moon, right? It's all part of this longer roadmap that we have here at Blue Origin. But we're not going to do this mission alone, are we? Why don't you talk to us about this? Patrick has been part of this program, the Lunar program, from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's been incredible and so exciting to see it sort of go from, where it was, nascent 2-3 years ago and sort of where we are right now. It's just, the team has done such an incredible job. And so what you were hearing earlier is, Steve Squires, our chief scientist, talking about all the great things we're going to do, with the descent element and the science and all the incredible stuff we can do on the surface by landing these large payloads. That's incredible. And to me, what's even more incredible is when we get to work with Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and Draper. It's just a phenomenal team. And
they've got a little bit of experience in this.
Exactly.
Yeah, they've got a couple of years.
They've done this a few times, perhaps, and landed on planets, guided, Apollo, small things, and they've just done an incredible job. They brought their A team on this, and it's incredible to see just the heritage there, the incredible design that's in the ascent element that's actually going to be keeping the astronauts alive, taking them down to the surface and bringing them back up. The transfer element, which actually does a lot of the heavy lifting of the Delta V and gets the whole stack down into the right orbit and gets them down onto the surface, and of course, the lander itself, which is bringing that down to the surface and landing them safely, all guided by the Draper algorithms, proven since Apollo and able to bring this down safely with people on board, which of course always adds even more complexity. We can't wait to actually go land this.
Exactly. And again, you just mentioned the not just the complexity of the system, but then you just mentioned we're taking people to the moon.
Yeah.
Much like today, this is actually what we've done today is a step that contributes towards that, right? With New Shepard, we talked about, obviously, we're launching and landing this rocket. We've done it several times previously. We've layered on today the astronaut experience operations and rehearsal that we conducted earlier. And eventually, we're going to be doing that when we go to the moon, but that's not the only parallel between some of the operations that we're doing today and what we're going to do on the moon.
Yeah,
that descent element looks a lot, that landing looks a lot like a landing we know.
Exactly. I mean, if you can sort of like shrink a New Shepard a little bit, you can sort of imagine it's so close to a decent element. I mean, there's so many parallels there. And there is, hydrogen and oxygen, right? So the same propellants that we're using here.
That's on our BE-7 engine,
in the
correct?
BE-7 engine, right? Which again builds on a lot of the heritage of the BE-3PM, but it's about a 10x smaller thrust. So it's a little bit of a smaller engine, but even higher performing. Again, very, very compact, very excellent engine there, very efficient, high ISP. But again, builds on a lot of the same learnings from the BE-3 engine on New Shepard. And of course, our landing sequence with all of the landing sensors. And the same thing, you were coming in from about 100 kilometers and autonomously landing in, essentially also pretty rugged desert there. And so there's so much parallels there.
And actually, on that note, we have tested some of that lunar landing technology on New Shepard on previous flights, correct?
Exactly. So working with NASA and a lot of their sensors, we were able to get terrain relative navigation sensors, LiDAR sensors for hazard avoidance, all of these great sensors we actually are planning to use on various parts of the landing itself. We get to test them right here in very similar environments of actually coming down and helping us, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and how to, loop it into the guidance system. It's great to be able to do it here. And actually, by the way, get the sensors back, because as soon as it lands, you can just unbolt them, tweak them a little bit, put them back on, try it again next time.
And that really, New Shepard has been a test bed for many of our payload customers, but it's also nice to use it for our own technology. And again, between the New Shepard astronaut, human spaceflight tourism program that we'll be having coming up, plus our payload customers that have already flown on board in several of our previous missions, the Lunar program that has a lot of the technologies that are being transferred into the Lunar program, also New Glenn, et cetera. Yep. When you start to put those pieces together, you understand just the value of this rocket that you see on your screen right now. Absolutely has been critical and valuable not only to Blue Origin, but for many other programs out there.
That's right.
Okay, well, Patrick, we are at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go. We continue to be in a hold here. Why don't we check out New Shepard as she continues to get ready for her flight to space. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. There is New Shepard on the pad, ready to rock and roll here. We continue to be in a hold while our teams are getting aligned. But while we've got a little bit of time, we talked quite a bit about the booster earlier. Why don't we talk about the crew capsule? We saw earlier today the crew rehearsal. They rehearsed all of those pre-flight operations, and we had two of our stand-in astronauts go inside of the capsule, do some communications checks with Capcom, et cetera, tested out some of the systems in there. But why don't we let you guys inside the capsule? Let's check out some of the features. So the capsule, like the one behind us here, has 6 windows, 6 seats. As we mentioned earlier, over a third of the capsule is windows. So as we said before, you know, when you're up there floating in space, there's just so much window, it's going to feel like you are out there in space. The seats that you see there, those are in-house designed and tested. They're based off of a helicopter seat, right? Because helicopter seats, we want the ability through that scissor mechanism that you see there, and also that Gary brought up earlier, to take out any last-minute energy if necessary. You see there in the middle, that's our escape motor as part of our safety system to be used if anything wrong is detected with the booster. You also see the white padding on the walls. That's to absorb extra noise, so you get as clean and beautiful and get to experience as much of the silence of space as possible. So this capsule, when we're flying people shortly, I mean, it's as beautiful on the inside as what you're going to see on the outside. But I should note that when we designed the interior of the capsule, we did so to celebrate, if you will, the engineering that went into there. So you see there's not too many bells and whistles on it. It's really quite simple, so that the astronauts, when they're up in space, they can experience space, because that's what it's all about, right? All right, so we're at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go. We've introduced you to the capsule. New Shepard is on the pad, continuing to get ready for her launch today. So why don't we check her out? Thank you again, everybody, for joining us for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We're at T-minus 10 minutes and 45 seconds to go. We continue to be in a hold here. While we're just going to continue to watch New Shepard as she gets ready for flight today. We're just aligning our teams and making sure that weather is in bounds.
This is the flight director
Thank you
on
again,
Channel
everybody.
1 and UHF Voice for the go poll for terminal count and launch. Capsule.
Go.
Booster.
Go.
Ground.
Go.
Safety.
Rangers green. Go.
Engineering.
Go.
Capcom. This is the flight director. New Shepard is go for launch. Booster, commence the terminal count.
Wilco flight, and we still have step 104.
All right, everybody, we are go for launch. As we heard, we are at T-minus 10 minutes to go. The countdown clock has resumed. Phew. Let's do it, Patrick.
I know.
That was, you know, we are always looking forward to a launch, and certainly after today, you know, it's just so important that we make sure that we walk through all the checklists, make sure that everything is right, within bounds, and if we need to take a couple more minutes, you know, even 40 of them, that's quite all right with us.
That's right. You don't want to have go fever. You want to do this right and by the book.
Exactly.
I do want to say, I mean, can you imagine if you were actually sitting in a capsule right now, you would have heard this go, no-go poll in your headset. And I think, at least for me, this is where it would have just completely broken out in goosebumps, just knowing that the
I
launch
am right now.
it would be so, so exciting.
All right, and now all eyes are on New Shepard. We're into our last-minute checks. They are underway as New Shepard comes alive for flight. We have just a few minutes to go before final checks, so why don't we take a moment and walk through the booster and some of its key features. We did a little bit earlier in context of similarities and parallels to New Glenn, but let's focus on New Shepard. She really is the workhorse of the journey to space. As we mentioned before, New Shepard is powered by the BE-3 engine that's essentially fueled by water, liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. It propels the rocket to space and restarts for a controlled pinpoint landing on the pad. It's also uniquely throttleable, and that means it's able to slow the booster down to just about 8 kilometers per hour or 5 miles per hour for landing. And you can see at the top of the booster there's the ring fin, and the ring fin houses the drag brakes as well as the wedge fins. Wedge fins for stability, drag brakes to really cut down the speed. You'll see those will cut down the speed in about, that will cut the booster speed in about half. The drag brakes are critical, right? We talk about the balance between the engine and the booster's role in slowing down the rocket, but really it's just some simple aerodynamics from the drag brakes. The aft fins, as you can see towards the bottom of the booster, stabilize the vehicle during ascent, but also steer it back to the landing pad on descent. And they're actually strong enough to guide the rocket through airspeeds of up to Mach 4. And you think we talked about earlier about the winds aloft. Those are critical, those fins, in making sure that we get our rocket precisely back to the pad. Lastly, we have the landing gear. So all rockets take off, but
One
not all
hopes.
rockets land.
Yeah.
And as a fully reusable rocket, the new Shepard booster uses landing gear that deploys just in the last seconds for touchdown.
That's right. I mean, this is an incredible machine. You know, kudos to Gary and the team that have spent, you know, all this time designing it and getting it just right. And like we said, this booster design and all of the components inform so much of what we do here. We talked about the similarity between this and the first stage of New Glenn, of course, and the similarities there with the aerodynamics and the design. You know, it's the same propellant combination and a similarly derived engine for the upper stage of New Glenn, so obviously lots of design heritage there. And we talked about, of course, all the great learnings that we've applied to our descent element as part of the lunar lander. So truly, you know, you can almost think of New Shepard as a sort of that first path of the roadmap, and then it just branches out to all these other things that we've done.
Exactly, exactly. And we should also mention the reusability element of it, which is critical, right? With our vision of millions of people living and working in space, we need the ability to turn the rocket around quickly, reuse it again, bring down the cost of access to space. All right, you're looking at a live shot of New Shepard on the pad. We are T-minus 6 minutes to go until flight. Why don't we take a look at her? Thank you again for joining us for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. You are looking at a live shot of New Shepard. She's just about to begin her final preparations for her 15th flight to space. We are at T-minus 3 minutes and 10 seconds to go until launch. So for those of you that are just joining us now, earlier in our show, we showed our astronaut experience crew rehearsal. Very exciting. That all seems to have gone perfectly well. And now we're ready for New Shepard's flight itself. So at T-minus 2 minutes, the rocket is going to go into autonomous mode. We throw the show over to her, and the rocket is in charge of itself from liftoff, its entire flight to space, and its landing back, the rocket itself on the landing pad just 2 miles north of the launch pad. In just a moment here, we are going to see the engine gimbal check. as well as what we call the built-in test, the bit checks. We want to make sure that we can move the aerodynamic surfaces freely so that they, just like an airline pilot does before his or her flight, to make sure they've got free range of motion. We also, at the top of the tower, of course, have the gantry that will also retract.
That's right, and Ariane, right there on the gantry, you see these big sun shields there. You know, one of the, if you have 6 very large windows, like you said, and 60% of the capsule is actually windows by volume. There you go.
There it goes, the retraction.
Retraction right there. So we actually need those shades there just to keep the sun out of the capsule. We want to make the astronaut experience as comfortable as possible. We want to keep them in a nice, cool temperature. As I'm sure we don't want it to turn into a greenhouse with all of this big, beautiful windows. So what our team did is actually put these shades in. It makes it a great experience. And then, now if you or I were in there, we'd be looking out and just...
Ready for launch.
Yes.
Ready for launch. A simple but beautiful solution. All right, there go the aft fin checks. There are 4 of those fins at the base of the rocket. Here you see the nozzle peeking out of the base of the rocket there. There goes the gimbal check. The engine gimbal, of course, is critical, but in particular as it's coming into land. And Patrick, that takes us to launch. We're at T-minus 30 seconds. Why don't we hand it over to Mission Control for New Shepard's 15th flight to space? It's going to be worth the wait, man. Godspeed, New Shepard.
Guidance internal. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Command engine start. 2, 1.
And we have liftoff. Go, New Shepard, go. Beautiful liftoff from our launch site 1 in West Texas. You can follow along as she gains speed in the bottom left corner of your screen. There's the speedometer, altimeter in the middle there. First milestone on our trip to space, max Q. That's when the dynamic pressure on the vehicle is at its maximum, the toughest point in flight for the vehicle. And max Q is confirmed. All right, right about this time in your flight, on ascent, you're going to max at about 3 Gs. We've noted it before. The max Gs that you pull as an astronaut on New Shepard actually is on descent. So here on ascent, it's about 3 Gs, and it comes on gradually as you go faster and get higher up there. Until, of course, main engine cutoff and separation, and that is when you get to feel those beautiful 0 Gs. We're waiting for that here. Next stops, MECO and separation. Coming up here on MECO, main engine cutoff. So far, a clean burn from our BE-3 engine. There it is, main engine cutoff. All right, appears we have lost the link to the J layer. So far, though, everything appears to be nominal. So far, what we have seen a clean liftoff. We did have max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. That is essentially for the rocket the hardest point in the flight. And then we had main engine cutoff. And now, as you can see, separation. Here we've got our infrared camera, especially on the left side. As you've seen earlier in the show, it is a little hazy down there in Texas, so we are going to rely on multiple cameras here as the vehicle continues its ascent towards space. We have passed over just about here the Kármán line. There it is, 100 kilometers, or about 328,000 feet. If you were inside there, Patrick, you will have become an astronaut. And we're just waiting for the two craft to hit their apogee. You'll know they've hit apogee when the speed hits 0 in the bottom left corner of your screen. There it is, apogee just at about 346,000 feet. Of course, we're going to have official stats for you after the flight via Twitter, but so far so good. Patrick, looks to be a nominal flight of New Shepard. You see the booster on the right and the capsule on the left. This is when they've begun their descent. As we've seen in the past, obviously the booster is going to beat the capsule down to Earth as it's more better aerodynamically shaped. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us live for New Shepard's 15th flight to space. We are 5 minutes into what appears to be so far a nominal flight for New Shepard. We, of course, preceded the launch by what appears to be a perfectly executed astronaut experience rehearsal. While there are no astronauts on board today, that was a critical step towards our march towards first human flight. All right, we've picked up our long-range cameras again. There you see the booster, the bottom of the screen, and the capsule on the top. At this point, the booster is re-entering the atmosphere. It means it's going to have air pressure against which those aerodynamic surfaces Patrick and I were walking you through can push against to guide the rocket back to its landing pad. And to think this rocket will have peaked at almost Mach 4, and by the time it touches down, it's just going to touch down at about 8 kilometers per hour or 5 miles per hour. So relatively speaking, a nice soft landing. Critical, as we talked about reusability, the softer the landing, the quicker you can turn it around, right? You're not jostling the rocket, you're not jostling the hardware. You want to be able to flip it around nice and quickly. So there you see the aft fins. We also call them the pie fins because they're shaped like pie wedges. All right, there go the drag brakes. And there you see all the speed bleeding off of the vehicle and waiting for our BE-3 engine to relight. There it goes. Landing gear deployed. Oh, look at that smooth landing. And touchdown. Welcome back, New Shepard.
Oh my God, what a beautiful landing,
I think that was one of the smoothest landings I've seen of this rocket. It almost looks unreal. It looks like CGI. I know some of you on the internet seem to think that. Believe me, that is a reusable rocket that takes off and lands. What a beautiful landing.
It looks like it's ready to go again.
Yeah. yeah, just, you know, put in those drag brakes, put in the wedge fins, fuel her up, let's go again. But until then, the show is not over. We do have the crew capsule here. On board, we have Mannequin Skywalker, as well as a couple of payload lockers filled with postcards from Club for the Future, from students from around the world. We are waiting to see the drogue chutes come out. They will be followed by the main parachutes. And a little wink from one of those big, beautiful windows. Look at that. There go the drogues. And here come the mains. All 3 parachutes are out. We're looking for full inflation, and there they go. I love that. So far, so good. A nominal launch, nominal landing for the booster. We're waiting for the crew capsule to come into land. We're at about 1,600 feet to go. And a nice smooth descent at about 16 or so miles per hour. Just at about 25 or so kilometers per hour. That is a nice smooth descent. There's the valley of our West Texas launch Site 1 as we call it. What a day so far, Patrick, let me tell you. Now, at 800 feet to go here, we should remind everybody that we do have the retrothrust system that kicks on just in the last moment. Basically, it just creates a nice air cushion for the capsule so that next time, hopefully, you know, when you and I are up in that capsule one day, we are going to be getting a nice air cushion underneath the capsule. And touchdown.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Absolutely spectacular. Patrick, I told you it was going to be worth the wait. Look at that.
Definitely. I love you can just see it just as it lands. You see that puff of air and it kicks up all that dust, but it's just such a gentle landing right there.
A beautiful launch and landing for both the crew capsule and the booster. Team Blue, congratulations to all of you. What a day. You should be so proud. And again, Patrick, soon, you know, if you're an astronaut on board, that is going to be a ride of a lifetime. Cannot wait to check out those onboard cameras to see the views that Mannequin Skywalker had today.
And he gets to have all the fun, gets to go everywhere.
I know, that guy. Jeez.
Now, to bring it all right back around, right, we started the day, you know, as exciting as this launch is, we actually started with, you know, the astronaut rehearsal, sort of on top of the normal launch preparation. And now we're going to bring it all back. Those same stand-in astronauts are going to go back out to the capsule. Once we open the hatch, they're actually going to get in, and we're going to practice and rehearse, essentially getting the astronauts out safely, getting them back into the van, have them reunite with their loved ones, and that's when they would go off and celebrate this sort of incredible experience they would have just had. So, you know, I can tell you that when we've done this in rehearsals and the people have just been sitting out there when this has just happened, you know, they just get emotional. Even just sitting in at the very end, they get emotional. I can only imagine what it'd be like to actually fly and get landed.
We see it time and time again. You saw a little bit. Obviously, we didn't have the audio for the safety shelter earlier today, but you know, seeing the reactions of our stand-in astronauts from having done the rehearsal, they get super, you know, psyched and worked up, as they should, right? And then same thing, as you just mentioned, when they come out of the capsule, it is, you know, we put them in, but then they come out again, and it's just this elation. And to think, you know, next time, you know, it's coming up soon, when we start, you know, putting people in that capsule, you compound it with a launch to space and back. With a boat full of adrenaline, you better believe they are going to be absolutely psyched and ready to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Well, so the recovery process is underway. It goes like this. So Since the capsule has landed, we do have the recovery team, which includes a couple of lead vehicles, safety vehicles, and of course our crew member 7. They are quickly traveling out to the landing site. Now, this team's job, if there are astronauts on board, is to ensure that the astronauts safely exit the capsule. The astronaut families, as Patrick mentioned, in parallel are on their way, would be on their way to come welcome our astronauts. Now, once the astronauts would step out of the capsule, newly minted an astronaut, as we mentioned, it is time to celebrate. Now, simultaneously, we also have another team that is heading out to the booster to safe the vehicle and get it back to the barn. I mean, we joked about the quick turnaround. Obviously, we're not flying again today, but it's the keeping the costs of spaceflight down. You have to work on the operations, get those tight, get them quick to be able to reuse the vehicle as much and as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. That asset turnaround is absolutely key there. And again, the point of today's flight was to mimic the astronaut experience profile under real launch conditions, right? Astronaut loading is complex, launch is complex, doing them both together is super complex, and doing them well, and you saw that happen today, is going to be a huge step forward.
Patrick, what a great day. Actually, while we've got a moment, why don't we check out some of the highlights from today's launch and landing. So we had New Shepard on the pad there, a nice ignition. And a clean lift off. Look her go. That rumble, you can see it in the cameras, and when you're down there in Texas, the whole valley feels like it's shaking when that 110,000 pounds of thrust is lit underneath the engine. And this angle. Patrick, this is one of my favorite angles. It's very reminiscent of, you know, the Saturn V taking off from the pad during the Apollo days.
Absolutely. Super, super reminiscent, super vintage look. Now, this angle right here is one you would not have seen back in the Apollo days. But this is the kind of the cool thing about having these drones up there. So you can get these beautiful shots of the rocket just going by as it's flying up.
So close you can touch it, right?
I know.
All right, here comes the booster back for its soft landing. Again, Patrick, I think this is one of the smoothest, most controlled landings I've seen from this rocket.
It makes it look easy.
It's like it's just dangling from a string.
And that's one of the benefits of having such controllability in the engine, is you can really sort of dial that thrust in and ease your way down onto the launch pad.
Exactly, exactly. And talking about the, we were talking earlier about the lessons that we're taking from New Shepard and pulling into New Glenn, that throttleability on the engines is critical. And then last but not least, of course, our capsule with a nice air-cushioned landing. And you can see, actually, the parachute's dropping pretty close to the capsule, meaning there's not too much wind there out on the ground today, which is beautiful. And now live shots from the recovery team that are out there. You can also see, again, we're in preparation of bringing the stand-in astronauts back. We're going to get them into the capsule so that we can practice the egress and taking out of the astronauts from the capsule. Again, coming to you soon. This has been such a critical step, this astronaut experience rehearsal in the march towards human spaceflight. Let's just take a look here. Setting up the stairs. It's a couple feet off. It's about a meter from the ground up to the hatch itself. So making sure they've got a nice, comfortable step out.
Yeah.
Onto the desert floor.
I'm sure my heart would have been beating so heavily through